Thank you, David. It really is a privilege to be here, and it's really nice to be with you all celebrating Dharma Day and connecting over the Dharma. Um, yeah, I feel like my practice has really changed recently, and I feel like I'm going through a kind of process of opening. And I think what's happened really is that I've shifted from being really disciplined to being really devoted. Okay, I think that's the kind of the theme of what I'm going to say today. So yeah, I'll start from the beginning. Why I turned to the Dharma. Like some of you, maybe not everyone. I know from the Mitra ceremony that I was at a couple of weeks ago for Joe and Helen, they knew they wanted to be Buddhist because they always felt like they were Buddhists, and for me that wasn't the case, decidedly so. I turned to this because I was really suffering, and I just needed a way out of that suffering. The Dharma just seemed to have a solution to what I thought was the root of my suffering. I would say I was committed from the very beginning, but that commitment was more of a kind of discipline. I was really inspired initially by Theravadan Buddhism. So if you're familiar with that, one of the emphasis is the practice of renunciation. Okay, so sort of suppressing and sort of stilling sense cravings. Okay, the sort of the senses, sort of I forgot the word now, but yeah, sort of repressing, but in a sort of skillful way. So I really lent into that, and I the reason I was suffering, I'm certain it maybe wasn't the full picture, but it was lots of the addictive tendencies I had in my life. I had lots of very destructive habits, drugs, other things like that. And yeah, I realized that I was just very addictive and had all these really unhelpful things in my life. So I just decided I'm going to strip them all out. And it had a really powerful effect. I really tried to live like a monk for a while. And I say a while, it was about a couple of years, really, maybe, yeah, 2.5 years of really trying to, repress my senses. So I gave up any sort of drugs, alcohol, pornography, any kind of sexual activities, entertainment, music, anything that people usually turn towards to perhaps escape what I think a lot of people think is the kind of the boring mundaneness of life. I sort of stopped all that, and what happened was, in a certain sense, I did see the deathless. So one of the things that I'd also did during that period of my life is I stayed in a Theravadan monastery for a week, and the monastery is called Amaravati, which is actually I think it's Sanskrit for the deathless realm. So it was really about the deathless, and the sort of the ideas that were being taught, the sort of the version of the Dharma that was being taught there, really seemed to correspond to what I was experiencing at the time. And it was this really unmediated presence, this really unmediated awareness. It just felt like there is just what is, and there's nothing else, and there's no me. You know, I really felt like a significant chunk of who I was just disappeared, because that chunk of myself was my addictions. And that really, I thought, wow, I've found the answer. This is it. I've just got to keep doing what I'm doing. So as well as renunciation, I was just sitting a lot. I was doing 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, just sitting, doing nothing. And at this point, I was practicing with Triratna, but I had a sense that what this practice of just sitting and sort of restraining the senses was all I needed. And I was coming here really just, I'm not sure what it was I wanted, but I guess I had a faint sense that I need to do this journey with other people, but it wasn't very vivid at that point. So I was turning up and I was having all these wonderful talks, and there was wonderful people around me, but I wasn't listening to talks too much. I was doing my own meditation. I was just thinking, no, I'm just going to sit, and I thought that was going to free me from my suffering. But actually, what I found was I was still suffering. I was this complete awareness. The awareness was very sharp, very vivid. I didn't really feel like I was a person most of the time. I think I had a bit of a sort of alienated sense of awareness. And yet, despite that, I could sit with my suffering, but it was still there. I was still deeply suffering. Something was not quite right. And I think one of the one of the sort of stepping stones to how my practice has changed and how I feel like I've connected with the Dharma properly was going on the bike ride last year for 5 weeks. And I really came up against a different part of myself there because we were all together. It was very intimate. There was a real emphasis on intimacy and open communication, which I really struggled with. I found really, really difficult. And it got me reflecting about, actually, I've got this suffering, but I also think that one of the things I find hardest is being with other people and trying to make friendships and trying to connect with people. And that always caused me a lot of stress, and that always made me feel uneasy. So that kind of planted a little seed in my head, but I didn't really do too much about it for a while. And then I had a few more conversations where someone said to me that the whole point of the spiritual path is friendship. And I thought, I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think it's transcendence, it's escape. You know, the Buddha keeps talking about we can escape suffering. So I thought, yeah, that's all well, that's very nice. That's quite a nice idea. But no, I want to escape. You know, I'm going to get out of this samsara. But I think it did have an effect. And I think just coming more and more, I guess naturally just started to see there is something to Sangha, there is something to friendship. And I was inspired by how open the people I most admired were with each other and the friendships they were cultivating. And I thought, well, I've still got this suffering and it's still bogging me down, but maybe I should redirect my attentions, maybe work on this. And I think one of the things that prevented me was I always felt like my suffering was what was stopping me from making friends, was stopping me from connecting with people. And I thought, I've got to sort that first, then I'm going to work on those friendships. And I realized what I did is I put the cart before the horse. I hadn't realized that the cause of my suffering was the fact that I wasn't connecting with people. And that actually, if I learn to connect with people, the suffering will go away. So I think it happened in a gradual process, but I joined a study group, and initially I was kind of going through the motions a bit. And I had an important conversation about friendship at one point. And I suddenly realized, no, do you know what? I am going to take this seriously. I'm going to show up and I'm going to be there for those guys, and I'm going to try and take that sort of mini Sangha seriously. And I did notice something happened. I did notice that real suffering alleviated a bit. And I thought, okay, well, let's see if I can do this in other ways. So there were other weekday commitments, which I think the suffering and the kind of exhaustion of being with the suffering would have held me back from. I thought, let me just go and do it. And what I found was that initially, all that worry about not having enough energy that's it.
Yeah, no, keep going. We've just had a bit over 5 minutes.
Sorry. Okay. All that energy that I was worried I wouldn't have enough to devote to it, it actually it didn't take my energy away. It replenished it. I became more and more energetic the more I gave to my relationships with people. So that was amazing, and I think that's where the kind of blooming really started to begin. I then also switched my practice to metta, and I just in quite a disciplined way, I just do loads and loads of metta. And that really just enhanced it. I felt like the kind of lopsided practice I had with one kind of aspect of it was really developed. It kind of all started to fill out a little bit more in a more stable way. And yeah, relationships are just amazing now. And I feel so connected to the Sangha. And it has a transcendent quality. And as you were talking, I was thinking, how does it connect with the deathless? And I think what I've realized through this is that by being in friendship with people, and when you have real friendships where you are really putting someone before yourself, where you're thinking about other people more than you're thinking about yourself, that is transcending. And if you live in that way, if you don't live for yourself, if you live for others, you've already killed yourself. Doesn't exist anyway. You're not going. There's nothing to die. Yeah, you've achieved the deathless. You're not living for yourself. If you live for yourself, yeah, you're gonna on your deathbed. You're going to be terrified because that thing is going to go. One last thing I'm going to say about that sort of transcendent nature. The other thing I did I've been really appreciating. You mentioned beyond time. I think there's also something universal in all of us that you can see when you prioritize people before yourself. And if you really take people in, you'll notice that everyone is just a bunch of conditions, just like yourself, but there's something purer underneath that, and I think you can access that through Sangha and friendship. Yeah, I think I'm going to end there because that's where I am now. So yeah, I think the Dharma it cannot be achieved alone. It has to be together. Yeah, it has to be in connection with other people. Yeah.